It was not okay for me to be an ambassador for happiness when I was so unhappy. And I wanted to actually walk the talk. I wanted to really embody everything that I was standing for. And I felt like I wasn't. And so the moment that I decided I was going to go ahead with this decision, that I was going to take the leap and that I was going to follow my dreams, I suddenly felt like that spark was back. That flame was burning inside my heart once again.
Are you, yes, you, that person who's looking to live their life with meaning and purpose? Well, in this episode of KEAL, I fortunately have the pleasure of speaking with Aliénor Salmon. She can pronounce her name much better than my horrible way of pronouncing anything whatsoever, always, as you all know, who watch continuously, who is someone who actually quit her job at the UN and is now living the life of her dreams all around the world, dancing, doing many, many other things with heart and purpose. Aliénor, welcome to KEAL. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am very good. Thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much, Aliénor. It's a pleasure to have you on this episode. And you have just an amazing story about like really following what you want to do with your life, with your heart. And I would say at quite a young age, in my opinion. So a lot of our audience is struggling in many ways to get out of, let's say, the quote unquote rat race, or get out of situations in their personal life that are just not good whatsoever. And a lot of those blockages that they experience don't give them enough confidence to seek a journey that they truly desire. It could be many things. I mean, there's so many variables out there, but in the end of the day, if you don't move at least one step, you don't move one step. So let's talk about a little bit more about you and your amazing journey. Yeah, I'm a loss for words because you've been everywhere. You're doing everything. So tell us about who you are, how you're able to do what you do, and why did you decide to do it, especially leaving a job at the UN?
All very big questions. So first I'll introduce myself. Your pronunciation was not that bad at all. My name is Aliénor Salmon. I'm half French, half English, and citizen of the world. And so, yeah, my story in a nutshell, I was working as a happiness researcher at the UN. I was studying the reform of education policy and systems in order to help learners be happier in school. And so as I was studying this in children, it really dawned on me that we as adults need this just as much, if not more. And the more that I studied happiness as part of this research, the more that I started questioning my own. And here I was giving speeches on happiness, publishing on happiness, and yet for personal circumstances, which included the loss of 3 people that I loved in a very short time and immense sadness and grief, I was profoundly unhappy. And this was just wrong. It was not okay for me to be an ambassador for happiness when I was so unhappy. And I wanted to actually walk the talk. I wanted to really embody everything that I was standing for. And I felt like I wasn't. And so one day I had a conversation with a friend and I asked her, I was really just looking for my way out of this sadness and this stuckness that I was feeling, and that I think so many people, especially that are in the corporate world, are feeling this stuckness of like, how do I get out of this? And what I did is I tried to think, and I voiced out loud to my friend, what would you do if you could do anything without the limit of time or money? And she said, oh, well, I would swim with whales in Papua New Guinea. I thought, okay, wow, I wasn't expecting that answer. And what I was expecting even less was for her to return the question to me. So at that point, I kind of think, well, wait, hold on. Here I am, expert on happiness, and I don't know the answer for myself. So I look down, I really kind of look inside my heart, close my eyes and think, what would make this flame just ignite? What would ignite the spark inside of me again? And for whatever reason, I started imagining myself somewhere in Latin America, speaking Spanish, dancing in the streets, having liberated my body from my desk, like reverse my desk punch, and just engaging with people, having authentic connections, connecting to music, and really just living. For me, this whole movie in my head basically looked like me really living my life fully, not just being stuck behind a screen all day. And so at this point, this was a complete hypothetical idea. And then I thought, my friend said, so are you going to do it? And I thought, well, wait, this idea 5 minutes ago didn't exist. And now suddenly I thought, okay, well, how do I do it? So I started thinking, okay, hypothetically, because often we get so terrified of our dreams that I find it much easier to just be hypothetical. Like, there's no commitment here. And that's when the really big ideas come out. And so I continued to brainstorm what countries, what dances, how long would I need to save for, and basically came up with a plan. Okay, we made a pact on that day that both of us were going to quit our jobs. And 9 months later, I was embarking on a journey dancing through 8 different countries, from New York to Buenos Aires, learning 18 different dances in 10 months. Each of them telling me a story of their country, of their people, and most importantly, their perspective on happiness. So that is the first question only, but it's my story.
Let's start there because it's fascinating. I want to ask you, because you had this epiphany, you had some kind of desire that flamed up in you to actually do this. But at the same time, am I getting the timeline right? Like, you were also grieving from the people
Yes.
that you had lost. This process is really important, I think. How in the world would you go from the situation of feeling a tremendous amount of grief for that amount of people and probably dearly special to you, to then having that epiphany and actually acting on it? Because no matter what happens in our life, actions speak louder than everything. So how in the world, I mean, how did you overcome that to actually then go deeper into putting this plan in action?
So the interesting thing with grief and with sadness is that it actually propels us to take risks that we wouldn't usually take. When you feel like you've lost everything, you don't have anything to lose. Because that is how we feel when we're in a state of grief. Maybe we haven't lost everything, but emotionally we feel like we have. And sometimes it really takes getting into the depths of sadness to actually find our greatest happiness. So in my case, I needed to be that sad in order to find the courage and the strength to leave everything behind, to go and follow the dream that was in my heart, that was against everything society would have put on that kind of path of traditional success for me. And that's why I think we should look at very difficult moments in life, whether we're going through a burnout or if we're grieving a loss, to look at how can we rise out of this, like, it's the expression like a phoenix out of the ashes. But actually, I really think that it's these moments that drive us to making big decisions and big life changes without fear, because it becomes our motivation to eradicate the pain.
It's really interesting, your experience, because I think you're right, because I've personally experienced that as well. It's like sometimes you get such down, for lack of a better expression, down in the dumps, or you just are in such a low point in your life that the pain, you can't go any lower almost. And you feel so bad that you're like, I'm going to do the opposite of what's going on. And it propels you in that way. And so it's like, okay, everything is just like this. Here we go. We're going this way. Mm-hmm. And that's that inverse reaction is really powerful. Is that what really got you to that next level, got you to partner with that person you're talking about and just say, hey, let's go for this? And you just did it. It was just pure energetically positive action. Is that what it felt like?
Yeah. And honestly, I can say that if I think back to this, the moment that I decided I was going to go ahead with this decision, that I was going to take the leap and that I was going to follow my dreams, I suddenly felt like that spark was back. That flame was burning inside my heart once again. And suddenly I had something to be very excited about.
Because Aliénor, sorry to interrupt you, but that literally is everything. Because if that didn't happen to you, and that experience with what was so profound and so deeply hurtful that impacted you didn't happen, you would not be where you are right now, I think. Right? Like you really wouldn't have done all these things that you've done and really encompass the virtueness of this entire world through your eyes and experiences and all its emotions if that didn't come up in you. It's like, boom, here we go. And I don't think that, do you feel like when you work with people and you speak with other people, meet other people, do you feel that that element is missing in others, or you try to help them discover that?
I think that when people are going through a really hard time and that they're reaching a low, I think I like to kind of invite them to consider that this is about to reveal the best part of their lives. And in most people that I've worked with or situations that I've seen, some of their hardest situations, whether it's a divorce or a burnout, or sometimes it can be more of a physical health issue, it has often led to them living a life that is closer to what they wanted than what they had before. And they're probably much happier, I would say. I would dare to suggest that.
You know, it's what I've come to realize, and having the opportunity to speak with a lot of different people on this channel, fortunately, is the sustainability of this idea of happiness on a day-to-day basis, you know, because really, I mean, there's a lot of ebbs and flows throughout a yearly cycle, let's just say, right? And our life, of course, but it's really what we can seem to garner or realize and be aware of ourselves and what we're really doing day to day to make certain decisions and actions. Because maybe for you, if you didn't experience what you did and you always had in the back of your mind this idea of wanting to do something more, that sort of sensational plateau of just the idea itself would have been like, okay, yeah, it'll happen someday. Yeah, it'll happen someday. Yeah, it'll happen. Like it's always put off. It's always there, but it's not like acted upon forthrightly, you could say. So what, like, for you is, because now your life is totally different than what it was at that time working with the UN. So like, I mean, do you generally feel like a person who wakes up every day grateful for life, excited about life, or are there certain things like you get yourself kind of, let's say, in the mood for to bring on the day, or like certain things that just keep you, generally motivated all throughout a single day?
That's another really good question. And I have to say, I study happiness. It's what fascinates me. And happiness is a job. It is a full-time job. And it's not always the easy way to live. Sometimes it's easier to ignore some of the big decisions we want to make. But then you also have these very daily habit kind of things that contribute to our daily and sustainable happiness, as you would say. And this is forever fascinating for me. I look into different approaches to building happiness in the way that someone might build wealth. I see it as building happiness over time, so that it is sustainable. It's impossible to be happy 24/7. I'm not happy 24/7, even though I practice happiness every single day, because I have my own practices and exercises, and I study it, and I've opened my mind to so many things, but there are so many things to consider. It's kind of like a happiness maintenance. You have to do your maintenance every single day. And what does that look like? That looks like starting the day with a morning routine. So I have a journaling morning journal where I write down what I'm grateful for, and it really does make every single difference. I reflect on all the great things that happened the previous day, and then I think of what wasn't so great. And then most importantly, I put, what am I most excited about today? And even on the days where I'm maybe not so happy, it makes every single difference. And I can tell the difference between the days when I do that and don't do that. Then generally, I would say living in alignment with our values. Sometimes we do things that are not us, that are not what we want, because we're more concerned about how we might appear to others or what might please others. But actually, if you're not you, then it's going to make you unhappy because you're not in alignment somewhere. So I think I really care a lot about looking at values and character strengths, which actually make up the science of happiness and positive psychology, and really practicing those different strengths on a daily basis, and having intentional moments for appreciation, whether it's just looking at stopping by a tree or feeling the breeze on your face. I mean, really in detail, these very, very simple things on a daily basis, they are our happiness maintenance. But sometimes we rush through life so fast that we don't even take time to savor them.
It's really interesting, that idea, happiness maintenance, because also looking at your tagline on Instagram, which, by the way, will include all of Eleanor's details in the description, the podcast notes, the show notes, the pinned comments, everywhere, so you can connect and follow her right after this episode. So don't forget. It says bringing happiness science to life, and I like that idea of happiness. Like when I think of this, also just threading off what you're saying on a personal basis as well, like that idea of what you're saying about the maintenance aspect of it, it has to do all with personally balance and awareness. Those two things. Oh, like the pendulum doesn't swing too far one way or the other, right? It's trying to get somewhere in the middle always. But you got to bring a lot of awareness in your life too, because like you said, you could go all throughout your day and not see that beautiful jacaranda tree right in front of you. You could go all throughout the day and not see this bird I got here out the window laying egg in the tree, in the palm tree, and just be on the screen, which thank all of you who are watching or listening. That's great. But all day, every day, without ceasing to stop and do something else. I mean, this awareness aspect is so profoundly important. And I've come to realize, based on those incredible comments that you just gave, is that, most days I feel just really content, right? I think just the word happiness for me just sounds like a lot of, I got to have a lot of gusto and smiley and this and that. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, because you are the expert. You study at the UN, so, but for me, just being really content, because sometimes you don't have enough energy and this and that. I'm really happy with my wife every day, even though she thinks I'm not. But just being really content. And then there's those moments of total euphoria, right? Like day to day, because you're doing the dishes, you're cleaning, you're turning on your computer, you're going, showering, you're going to the gym. I don't know. I mean, just the chores itself take out so much of your day and work, right? But just content with each of those things. Oh, I enjoy cleaning this toilet. I enjoy washing that dish. I enjoy hugging my wife. I always do, and then the euphoric moments are like, oh, I'm going to see, well, especially before the pandemic, this band. Oh my goodness. And then there's that total euphoric high of like, that you get around that kind of energy. So like when you're working, and as you did in the past as well, and even now, when you're working with people, what is it that they're normally coming to you with to seek out that idea for themselves of what happiness is? Like, what is it that is usually just holding them back, blocking them, and which way or approach do you take to help them?
So usually people come to me with this feeling that on paper, they have everything. They have the right job, they have the right salary, maybe they have the right partner. But for some reason, they're not feeling joy or fulfillment or meaning or purpose. And the way that I define happiness, and it's not just me, it's if I take basically going all the way back to the ancient Greeks until today, there are two kind of types of happiness. Hedonic happiness, which is a moment, that kind of jump for joy, I am so happy right now. And then eudaimonic happiness, which is fulfilling one's full potential and living a fulfilling life. So basically, if we define happiness as life satisfaction, as fulfillment, as purpose, and as fulfilling our potential, self-actualization, all these kind of concepts, then actually it isn't this, you have to be so happy right now, but more it is a way of living your life, of enjoying doing the dishes, of relishing in the feeling of the soap on your hands and the water that's running through your fingers. Just as an example, you can turn that into a mindfulness activity. In fact, that's one of the examples that I'm a big fan of Dr. Nicola Pera, the holistic psychologist. She always uses this example of taking a minute, washing the dishes, and enjoying this feeling of the soap. But most of all, what I find is that people are so caught up trying to live up the definition of what a successful life is that they have left their own happiness behind in the process. And by that, I mean the things that bring them joy, the things that help them be themselves, whatever makes them feel part of something bigger. Because happiness can be as simple as walking outside in the sunshine, or connecting with friends, rather than working ourselves to death like we've seen in literally with this huge burnout epidemic, especially in the US.
Mindfulness and perspective as well. Like if those two things can go hand in hand, could really change your everyday. I mean, luckily here in Mexico City, they cut the water often enough that you know how it is to live with the, benefits of water running 24/7, but they give you a quick wake up and let you know, hey, we're going to cut it for 2 months now. So, and then you get it back and then you never want to go away ever again. But, just like that idea, like you're saying, mindful, like washing the dishes and then realizing somewhere in another part of the world, there's probably literally people every day walking miles and miles and miles to a well somewhere and not getting even half the water you're using for those 3 dishes. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's hard to sometimes have that always in constant thought, but the more you can, the more like, holy cow, that attitude of gratitude can really put our life into a positive motion. And so for you, how important is the idea of gratitude with where you've come into your life up until this point, especially between, your younger years and where you are now? Like, is that something that's a constant way of incorporating your day to day?
So I started incorporating gratitude into my practice probably about 4 years ago. It's something that I had studied, but to actually put it into a daily practice, it took me a bit of time. And I would tell, if anyone asked me, what's the quickest fix for me to be happier tomorrow or today, I would tell them to start with gratitude. Because if we take the definition of happiness as life satisfaction, then if we want to be satisfied with our lives, we have to appreciate and be grateful for everything that we have. Unfortunately, we're living in a society that is built on a scarcity mindset, that we need to make more money, we need to have that car, we need to have that job, we need to buy that house. But what if we, for one moment, took a moment to just be grateful for everything that we do have and to appreciate everything that we have, to appreciate nature and animals? This is a really good practice. I do it all the time with flowers, with trees, with nature, and just, taking a time to appreciate very, very simple things that we are so lucky to experience, rather than focusing on what we don't have.
Luckily, I have a little doggy. She's so beautiful that I look at her. I mean, I think my wife gets jealous, but, like just looking that face and those eyes every day, everything dissipates, right? The more, like you're saying, the more you can just be aware of the beauty I think there's more beauty around us than people really realize. So just to soak it in each and every day and remind yourself it's right there in front of you. Like Wim Hof says, turn off the monkey mind or the monkey brain, whatever he calls it, and just focus on being here now and what's right there, and embracing it with all the emotions, hopefully, that we, all the senses that we all have, if we do have them all. Some people don't, some people can't taste, some people can't see, etc. Right? But just being appreciative of what you can do with the capabilities and abilities that you really encompass, and really embrace life that way. And I want to go back because something just came into my mind when you were doing your work, especially because it was focused on kids, right? Like at the UN, known and seen different studies about, depression rates spiking, especially since like the early mid 2000s, and even more and more perpetually each and every year. And there's a lot of factors that come into that. Why is that such a big issue, especially for younger generations? This idea of like, okay, we need attention to these issues going on and not really feeling happy with many things.
So for me, the big thing would be technology and social media. I was very lucky to grow up without social media. I created my Facebook account in my last year of undergrad. So I was not in this perpetual cycle of fearing, comparing myself to others, and everything that I've read on Gen Z and is basically and on happiness in children, and is this huge sense of loneliness that is caused from over-connection to their phones. And so that would be the concern in younger people, but actually in all of us. People are scrolling through life, literally, rather than living their life. And we're all guilty of it. I have these scrolling moments and I'm like, where did my life go for the last half an hour? But then sometimes you have really valuable social media content. It depends what you're consuming. If that content is improving your life, which I focus on that kind of content, then it is going to enrich you. However, for younger people in particular, social media has caused, already from a happiness science perspective, comparing ourselves to others is already one way of instantly being unhappy. So if we compare ourselves to others in terms of appearance, in terms of possessions, job title, status, income, then this is really a recipe for unhappiness. And unfortunately, social media is only providing a platform for that sometimes, especially in younger kids. They're always comparing what they look like compared to others, and unrealistic expectations on body types, for instance, leading to eating disorders. In adults as well, I would say generally in the workplace, the pace of information is so fast that people, what I see as something really terrifying is this urgency culture of having to be available all the time. Every email that pings in your inbox, you feel like you need to respond to it immediately, when actually it is just not sustainable, and you're not going to do your best work if you're rushing to reply to everything. So I would definitely bring it down to technology and social media, which are also a really big source for good. But that would be the difference that I would see.
That's huge. And I completely concur with everything you're saying there, especially I think more than anything, like you said as well, like the saturation and the immediacy of everything. Like myself, like you, growing up, my childhood in the 90s, like the internet and social media was not even a thing till college, so having the ability to be outside all the time and actually talk to the person to his or her human body was a big deal, so now if you don't get a reply right away about something, it's like, okay, I'm gonna break up with that person, or that person's not part of my life anymore. It's hard to put into words, but it's definitely not the healthiest thing in the world. It's a tool, like you're saying, if you're using for the right reasons and for certain ways to advance, like what we do, essentially getting messages out, sharing, etc., for a certain period of time throughout the day, that's good. And 9 hours straight, that's another thing, right? And that could have other sort of adverse kind of issues I can imagine later on. And Aliénor, I only have time for one more question to ask you, and I'm so grateful for you to be on this episode. It's really an honor and just scintillating conversation. And for all our podcast listeners and everyone viewing on all our platforms, we're going to include all of her information below, and I'll have her share it here in just a moment so you can connect with her, follow her, and see her incredible life, which leads me to my last question. I see you and on your Instagram, like you, Lisbon, Mexico City, Quito, Paris, Las Palmas. I mean, it's the scrolling doesn't stop. You just having an incredible experience, worldly experience. And someone that sees your example might say, this person's incredible, but I could never be like her, right? Because I am lacking in this department. I just don't have it. What is your message of, let's say, either hope or motivation, or just simple golden token of insight to give our audience, just to say, hey, you know what? Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would say that it is for everyone. It is not just a life. Often we see things that we think that's for others, it's not for me. But what if we all deserve to live a happy and fulfilling life in whatever shape or form that may look like? Because each and every person's definition of happiness is unique. I would say anything is possible as long as you find the courage to take the first step. And it's just that first step that's really scary. Often when we dream of, I don't know, whether it's traveling or following some journey or dream that we wanted, we think, oh no, but I'll never be able to do it. It's because we're always placing limits. So if we go back to the question that we explored earlier, that is how I embarked on this journey, it's because I asked myself the question, what would I do without the limit of time or money? Because those were the two excuses I gave myself all the time. I would ask people, imagine, what would you do without the limit of time or money? And let yourself imagine, just hypothetically, give yourself that luxury. There's no commitment, and you will be amazed by what you'll come up with. Not only that, you'll find that there is a practical way to make that come true. It just takes time, maybe planning or saving or figuring things out or finding a cheaper or closer alternative nearby. Anything is possible. You just have to take the first step.
And with that, please, all of our listening and viewing audience, take that into heart. Really let that seep in and sink into your heart today, and just really, really, listen back to this and, understand what Aliénor's saying there. It's really profound. I mean, she did it, and we can all do it if we really, really decide it's true more than anything and just move forward. And your example and your experience and your journey is incredible, Aliénor. And I thank you so much for sharing this incredible conversation with our audience. And where can people find you, connect with you, know more about you, figure out where you're going to be next? Are you going to the moon? Do you have a ticket? Where can they connect with you?
I wish I was going to the moon. That would be really cool. So people can find me mostly on Instagram at Bailando Journey. So that's BAILANDO Journey. Bailando being dancing in Spanish, because my approach is dancing through life. Nice. Also have my website, bailandojourney.com. My book, Finding Rhythm, is about my whole journey dancing around the world. That's available everywhere books are sold. And the big thing that I'm really excited about right now is I have a program coming out called Redefine Your Happiness, which is designed to help people define their very own unique version of happiness. I am sharing lots of fun things about this at the moment, and it's my absolute mission. So you can learn more about that on Instagram and on my website.
Well, we're going to make sure to include all of Aliénor's links everywhere across all the platforms, and her book link as well. So check out her book, buy it, read it as well. And once the program comes out, we'll update in our show notes her program, so you have that link so they could also take it, and I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. So, Aliénor, thank you so... Oh, go ahead. Sorry, were you going to say something else?
One more thing.
Yes.
Very important. I have a free happiness workbook that actually goes through all the steps that I went through in order to embark on my journey. So if anyone is feeling stuck or like they want to make a big decision, I really recommend the happiness workbook. It's completely free, and I will supply a link to that as well. Excellent. So we'll also include that link in all the platforms. So that is great. So many good things to turn your life around in case you feel really, really stuck and you want to live with your heart's purpose. So, Aliénor, thank you so much. It was an honor,
And thank you for being on this episode, Deaf KEAL.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care, everyone, and have a great day.